Madison, 27, stared at the declined payment notification on her phone as her mother, Judith's voice echoed through the upscale Hawaiian restaurant. What do you mean the card isn't working? The waiter shifted uncomfortably while her father, Roger, studied the menu, pretending not to hear. 3 hours earlier, Madison had frozen her account after enduring 2 weeks of funding their family vacation while being told repeatedly it wasn't about her. Now, watching panic flash across her mother's face, Madison felt something she hadn't experienced in years: control. And it was absolutely delicious. I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Take a second to drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to set boundaries with family members who took advantage of you. Trust me, this story about how I finally stood up to my parents after years of financial manipulation is going to make your jaw drop, especially when you see what happened when their card was declined at that five-star restaurant in Hawaii. I never planned to freeze my parents' access to my credit card in the middle of our family vacation, but looking back, I realized this moment had been building for 27 years. My name is Madison Lawrence, and I've always been the responsible one. While other kids in my neighborhood were spending their allowances on candy and toys, I was opening my first savings account at 12. By 16, I was working part-time at the local grocery store, setting aside money for college. My parents, Judith and Roger, never hid the fact that they wouldn't be contributing to my education. We believe in self-sufficiency, my mother would say, while simultaneously booking another cruise or purchasing a new car. After high school, I put myself through college, working 3 jobs while maintaining a 3.8 GPA. I graduated with a degree in finance, secured a position at a prestigious firm in Boston, and slowly climbed the corporate ladder. By 27, I had become a senior financial analyst, managing portfolios worth millions. I had also managed to pay off my student loans, purchase a modest condo, and build a respectable emergency fund. What I hadn't managed to do was establish healthy boundaries with my parents. Since my first job, I had been the family bank. When my father's business venture failed, I covered their mortgage for 6 months. When my mother needed dental work, I paid the $8,000 bill without hesitation. When their car broke down, I financed the new one. All while hearing how I should be more generous and family-oriented. My sister Allison, 2 years younger, had watched this pattern unfold and quietly established her own boundaries. She moved to Seattle after college, limited her visits home, and became mysteriously busy whenever financial assistance was needed. I envied her strength but couldn't bring myself to follow her example. Some misplaced sense of duty kept me tethered to my parents' financial needs. So when my mother called in January suggesting a reconciliation family vacation to Hawaii, I felt a familiar spark of hope. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe this trip would finally help us establish the warm, supportive relationship I'd always craved. We need to reconnect as a family, Judith said. Your father is retiring soon, and we want to create lasting memories with our daughters. I immediately agreed, excitement bubbling up despite my usual caution. A week later, my mother sent me links to luxury resorts in Maui, asking for my input on accommodations. I should have recognized the pattern when she added my credit card to the booking information just to hold the reservation, but optimism clouded my judgment. My best friend Stephanie noticed my renewed enthusiasm about my family and invited me for coffee. We sat at our favorite cafe as I shared the vacation plans. Madison, I'm concerned, Stephanie said, stirring her latte slowly. Every time you get your hopes up about your parents, you end up hurt and drained, emotionally and financially. This time feels different, I insisted. They specifically said it's about reconnecting. Stephanie raised an eyebrow. Have you discussed how expenses will be shared? I hesitated. Not explicitly, but I'm sure we'll figure it out. And that's exactly how they take advantage of you, Stephanie replied. You need to set clear boundaries before you go. Explicit conversations about who pays for what. I promised I would, but knew deep down I probably wouldn't. A confrontation with my parents always ended the same way, with me apologizing for being difficult and them getting exactly what they wanted. A week before departure, I called Allison to confirm final details, only to learn she wasn't coming. I couldn't get the time off work, she said, but her tone suggested otherwise. Allison, please, it won't be the same without you. Madison, she sighed, don't you think it's suspicious that mom and dad suddenly want a luxury family vacation right after you mentioned your bonus? I dismissed her concerns, though unease began to creep in. That feeling intensified the next day when my mother casually mentioned they had invited a few friends to join us. What friends? I asked, phone pressed to my ear as I reviewed my packing list. Oh, just Gerald and Barbara and Patricia and Donald. You remember them from the neighborhood? They're such good company and they've been wanting to see Hawaii.
For additional people?
My stomach tightened as I realized what this meant for the accommodations and activities I'd already paid deposits for. But instead of speaking up, I remained silent, telling myself this was still an opportunity to strengthen family bonds. One last chance to create the relationship I'd always wanted. I just had no idea how much that chance would cost me. The first red flag appeared at the airport. I arrived early as I always do and waited at the designated meeting spot near the check-in counter. When my parents finally appeared, rolling designer luggage behind them and flanked by their 4 friends, my mother's first words weren't hello or thank you for organizing this, but rather, Madison, be a dear and check us in. We've got everything under your confirmation number. As I approached the counter and handed over my ID, the airline representative smiled. Yes, Miss Lawrence, I see you're traveling with a party of 7 today. Just to confirm, you're in seat 28B, and the rest of your party is in first-class seats 2A through 2F. I blinked. There must be a mistake. We should all be in the same class. The representative checked again. The reservation shows 1 economy ticket and 6 first-class tickets. The first-class tickets were upgraded 2 weeks ago. I glanced back at my parents, who were chatting animatedly with their friends, deliberately avoiding eye contact with me. Swallowing my frustration, I collected my boarding pass and wheeled my carry-on toward the security line. The 6-hour flight gave me plenty of time to stew in economy while my parents and their friends enjoyed champagne and reclining seats. By the time we landed in Maui, I had resolved to have a direct conversation about expectations for the trip. That resolution evaporated at the resort check-in when I discovered another unpleasant surprise. We've got you in a standard garden view room, the receptionist said, and the rest of your party is in our oceanfront suites. The suites, I would later discover, cost triple what my room did, all charged to my credit card, of course. That evening we gathered for dinner at the resort's upscale restaurant. The sun was setting over the Pacific, painting the sky in brilliant orange and pink hues. Under different circumstances, it would have been breathtaking. Instead, I was calculating how much this meal would cost me as everyone ordered cocktails and appetizers. My mother clinked her glass to get everyone's attention. I want to propose a toast to my wonderful daughter Madison, she announced, causing a momentary flutter of appreciation in my chest, who has been so successful in her career and is generously treating us all to this magnificent vacation. The table erupted in cheers while I froze, wine glass halfway to my lips. Mom, I said quietly, I didn't agree to pay for everyone. Judith's smile didn't waver, but her eyes hardened. Don't be ridiculous, Madison. You're doing so well financially, and your father and I gave you everything growing up. This is the least you can do to show your appreciation. Gerald, my father's golf buddy, raised his glass higher. To Madison's success and generosity. Everyone drank while I sat there, humiliation burning my cheek. I tried again later that night, knocking on my parents' suite door, determined to establish some financial boundaries. Mom, Dad, we need to talk about expenses for this trip. My father barely looked up from his phone. What's there to talk about? You've got that big finance job. We're retired. This is how family works. But I didn't budget for 6 additional people. I can't afford to pay for everyone's meals, activities, and accommodations for 2 weeks. My mother emerged from the bathroom in a plush resort robe. Madison, you're making everything about yourself again. This trip isn't about you. It's about family reconnecting. The irony of her statement while standing in a suite I was paying for wasn't lost on me, but years of conditioning had me backing down once again. The next morning we took a group excursion to a famous snorkeling spot. As everyone boarded the catamaran, I noticed the tour guide checking names off a list. Lawrence, party of 7, he confirmed. That'll be $1,190 charged to the card on file. Before I could object, my mother handed him my card from her purse. I didn't even remember giving it to her. During the excursion, everyone posed for photos on the boat. Madison, take our picture. My mother called not once, suggesting I join the group photo. I became the designated photographer, documenting a vacation I was funding but not truly part of. That night I called Allison, desperate for understanding. They're using you, Maddie, she said bluntly. It's why I refused to come. Last family trip they did the same thing to me until I put my foot down. Then they called me selfish and turned to you instead. Why didn't you warn me? I asked, fighting back tears. Would you have believed me? You always want to see the best in them. She was right. Even now, part of me was making excuses for their behavior. The next day brought a shopping excursion to Lahaina. I had planned to buy some small souvenirs, but my budget-conscious plans were derailed when my mother dragged me into a high-end boutique. Oh, this would look lovely on you, Barbara, Judith exclaimed, holding up a silk scarf priced at $180. Before I could intervene, she had handed it to the cashier along with my credit card. Mom, you can't just— Don't be petty, Madison, she hissed under her breath. These are our friends. Throughout the afternoon, the pattern repeated: a pair of sunglasses for Patricia, a designer polo for Gerald, an expensive watch for my father, all purchased with my card, all without my consent. Later, I overheard a conversation that made my blood run cold. I was returning from the restroom at the restaurant when I caught my parents talking with their friends at the table. Madison owes us this trip, my mother was saying. Do you know how much we sacrificed to raise her? All those dance lessons and summer camps. My father nodded. She's just doing her duty as a daughter. In our day, children took care of their parents without complaining. The summer camps she mentioned had been paid for by my grandparents. The dance lessons lasted all of 2 months before they decided it was too expensive. The narrative they had created bore no resemblance to my actual childhood. As I stood there, hidden from view, memories flooded back: my college years working at the campus cafeteria, the local bar, and as a tutor, often getting only 4 hours of sleep. Meanwhile, my parents had taken a Mediterranean cruise, sending me postcards from Barcelona and Rome. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Nothing had changed. They had never seen me as an individual with my own needs and boundaries. I was simply a resource to be exploited. That night, lying in my garden view room with its distant view of the parking lot, I finally acknowledged the truth Allison and Stephanie had been trying to tell me for years. This trip wasn't about reconnecting. It was about using me once again. The next morning, I tried one last time to speak with my father alone, catching him on the resort grounds before everyone else was awake. Dad, I'm really struggling with how this trip is going. I feel like I'm just here to pay for everything. Roger sighed dramatically. There you go again, making everything about yourself. This trip is about family, Madison, not your bank account. As he walked away, I realized that in their minds, I wasn't even part of the family they kept referring to. I was merely the funding source. By the end of the first week, I decided to check my credit card statement online. The resort had a business center with free computer access, and I logged in with shaking hands, dreading what I would find. The total made me physically $14,768 already charged, and we were only halfway through the trip. The itemized statement revealed charges I hadn't authorized: spa treatments for my mother and her friends, golf outings for my father and Gerald, a sunset dinner cruise I hadn't even been invited to. Scrolling through the transactions, I discovered my parents had somehow used my card information to book additional excursions for the coming week: a helicopter tour of the island, a private luau, and a deep-sea fishing charter. None of these had been discussed with me. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Meet us for breakfast at the Terrace restaurant. We're discussing today's plans. At breakfast, I arrived determined to establish some financial limits. Everyone was already seated. Menus open. Mimosas ordered. Before we order, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, I need to discuss the budget for the rest of the trip. My mother's smile tightened. Budget? What an unpleasant topic for breakfast. I've already spent nearly $15,000 on this vacation. I continued. I can't afford much more. The table fell silent. Patricia and Donald exchanged uncomfortable glances. Perhaps we should give the family some privacy, Barbara suggested, starting to rise. Nonsense, my mother replied sharply. Madison is just being dramatic. She makes 6 figures in that fancy finance job of hers. That doesn't mean I have unlimited funds, I protested. I have my mortgage,
retirement contributions and other responsibilities. My father chuckled condescendingly. Listen to her talking about responsibility. When I was your age, I was supporting a family of 4. The conversation devolved from there, with my parents dismissing my concerns and their friends watching the uncomfortable exchange. By the end of breakfast, nothing had been resolved, and I had been thoroughly humiliated in front of everyone once again. I retreated too conditioned to keep the peace. Later that day, I overheard Patricia talking to Barbara by the pool, not realizing I was around the corner on a lounge chair. Judith and Roger have been so generous, inviting us on these trips, Patricia was saying. Remember Aspen last year and that cruise to Alaska? I know, Barbara replied. We could never afford vacations like these otherwise. It's wonderful having a friend whose daughter is so successful. My stomach churned as I realized this wasn't the first time my parents had used me to finance vacations for their friends. They had been doing this for years, positioning themselves as the generous hosts while my bank account took the hit. That afternoon, I expressed interest in attending a traditional Hawaiian cultural demonstration. Oh, we've already made plans, my mother dismissed. We're doing a private wine tasting tour. I wasn't told about this, I said. It was last minute. Gerald knows the vineyard owner. She held out her hand. We'll need your card for the deposit. I'd really prefer to do the cultural demonstration, I insisted. My mother's expression hardened. Madison, don't be difficult. Everyone else wants to do the wine tour. Once again, what I wanted didn't matter. I handed over my card, then watched from the resort lobby as they all piled into a luxury van without so much as a backward glance at me. That evening, sitting alone on my balcony, I checked my bank account and felt a wave of panic. My savings were being depleted at an alarming rate. My rent and utilities were automatically scheduled to process in 3 days, and if this spending continued, I might not have sufficient funds. I called Stephanie, no longer able to hold back tears. They're using me, Steph, just like you warned. They invited 4 friends without telling me, and I'm expected to pay for everything. I've spent almost $15,000 in a week. Madison, this is financial abuse, Stephanie said firmly. You need to put a stop to it immediately. How? If I confront them, they'll just manipulate me like they always do. Then don't confront them. Just cut off the money. Cancel your card. I can't do that in the middle of a vacation, I protested. Why not? They didn't consult you before inviting 4 extra people or booking first-class tickets. You don't owe them a consultation before protecting your finances. Her words resonated, but years of conditioning made it difficult to imagine standing up to my parents so decisively. The next morning, my father cornered me on my way to the beach before everyone else was awake. Madison, I've been meaning to talk to you, he began, his tone unusually friendly. Your mother and I are thinking of renovating the kitchen after this trip. Nothing fancy, just new countertops and appliances. I knew where this was heading. That sounds nice, Dad. We were hoping you might help us out with a loan, just $20,000 or so. You'd be the first one invited for holiday dinners with a new kitchen, he added, as if that were adequate compensation. I'll have to check my finances, I replied non-committally. He frowned. You know, sometimes I wonder if that finance job is good for you. You've become very calculating about money, not very family-oriented. The irony of him criticizing me while asking for a loan was staggering, but I had learned that pointing out such contradictions only led to more gaslighting. Later that day, I found an unexpected ally. Thomas, the hotel manager, noticed me sitting alone in the lobby, visibly upset after another tense interaction with my mother. Is everything all right, Miss Lawrence? He asked, sitting beside me. Something about his kind, professional demeanor broke through my facade. Not really. I'm having some family. Thomas nodded knowingly. Family dynamics can be complicated, especially on vacation when everyone's together 24/7. Have you seen this before? I asked. More often than you might think, he admitted. We see all kinds of family situations here, including ones where one family member seems to be covering all expenses without receiving much appreciation. His observation was so accurate that fresh tears welled in my eyes. Whatever you decide to do, Thomas said quietly, remember that the resort can arrange alternate accommodations or travel plans discreetly if needed. His words planted a seed in my mind. For the first time, I began to consider an exit strategy. The breaking point came the next morning. My mother appeared at my door at 7 a.m., already dressed for the day. Madison, I've booked the girls for a spa day, she announced. 4-hour packages for me, Barbara, and Patricia. They have an opening at 9 a.m. I didn't agree to that, I said, still groggy from sleep. Don't be selfish. This trip isn't about you, she snapped, holding out her hand. I need your card. The total is $1,800 plus gratuity. Those words that she had thrown at me repeatedly throughout the trip. This trip isn't about you. Finally crystallized everything. She was right. This trip wasn't about me. It never had been. It was about using me. As I mechanically handed over my card, something shifted inside me. A lifetime of accommodating their demands at my own expense suddenly felt unbearable. I watched my mother walk away with my credit card, and in that moment I began planning my rebellion. The next day, we all gathered for lunch at an upscale oceanfront restaurant in Whaley. Everyone ordered extravagantly, knowing they wouldn't see the bill. My father selected an expensive bottle of champagne to celebrate our wonderful time together, while my mother and her friends discussed which spa treatments they would book next. I sat quietly, picking at my salad, a strange calm settling over me. After years of anxiety about disappointing my parents, I suddenly felt nothing but clarity. My mother had my physical credit card in her purse, but she didn't control my bank account. I need to use the restroom, I announced, standing up from the table. No one really acknowledged me as I walked away, too engrossed in planning their afternoon activities. In a private stall in the elegant restroom, I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. My hands were steady as I navigated to the card management section. There it was, a simple option I had never used before. Freeze card. A warning appeared. This will temporarily prevent any new charges to your card. Are you sure you want to proceed? I thought about all the years I'd been the family ATM. I thought about the cultural demonstration I'd wanted to attend. I thought about my dwindling savings account, an upcoming rent payment. I thought about my mother's words. This trip isn't about you. I pressed confirm. A notification appeared. Card successfully frozen. No new charges will be processed until you unfreeze your card. I took a deep breath, applied fresh lipstick, and returned to the table with a genuine smile for the first time in days. Everything okay? My father asked, noticing my changed demeanor. Perfect, I replied, taking a sip of water. Everything is exactly as it should be. Lunch continued for another hour. More wine was ordered. Desserts were selected. I participated in the conversation minimally, watching the minutes tick by, knowing what was coming. Finally, my mother signaled for the check. The waiter presented the leather folder discreetly, and she opened it, barely glancing at the total before inserting my credit card. I watched with detached fascination as the waiter returned a few minutes later, his expression uncomfortable. I'm sorry, ma'am, but the card has been declined. My mother's face flushed. That's impossible. Try it again. The waiter nodded apologetically. I already ran it twice. The system is showing the card has been frozen. All eyes turned to me. My mother's expression shifted from embarrassment to fury. Madison, what is the meaning of this? I took another sip of water. The card has been frozen because I didn't authorize these charges. Unfreeze it immediately. She hissed, aware of the nearby tables. No, I said simply.